Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's always good to hear everyone talking and fellowshipping, having a good time together. Hope you're reading our passages each week. Hope you're doing that. And if you are, you know you're benefiting much more from the sermon, right? When you have read what Austin's covering that Sunday. So please do that. If you haven't started, just get one of those guys and just pick up. Just start. You know, maybe you think, I can't go back to the beginning and start. Okay, pick up where we are and just start. Just start. Don't let the devil tell you you can't do this. Because he will tell you. He'll come up with excuses for you. He'll help you think, nah, you don't need to read the Bible. You don't need to do that. So, encourage you to do so. We're studying miracles, and today we're going to do the Nobleman's son. If you want to go ahead and turn over to John chapter 4. I'm sure probably several of you in here like Western movies, right? Maybe some old Western movies. And maybe you like Clint Eastwood, like Clint Eastwood. Well, Clint, he has a famous line he would always say. He would squint those eyes, like this, and he would say, a man's got to know his limitations. And those would be the last words that bad guy would hear before he got blown in eternity, right, by Clint Eastwood. A man's got to know his limitations. Well, we may be finite people with finite abilities, but I tell you someone who is not finite in his abilities, and that is our Lord. Our Lord has abilities that we can even begin to imagine, but because we are finite human beings, and we know there are limitations to us, we place many times our limitations on our Lord, right? Because we just see things that way. Well, today we're going to talk about the healing of the nobleman's son in John chapter 4. It's in verse 46, but I want to do a little introduction first before we read it. So prior to this miracle, if you look over, just flip over to John chapter 2, you can kind of look at some of these things. In John chapter 2, in verse 13, Jesus is at the Passover. He's in Jerusalem there, and this is where we have the money changer scene where he goes in and turns the carts upside down and everything. But if you look down in verse 23, it says that many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did. Then a little later on, we know that he comes through Samaria, and he stops at the well. And remember the story of the lady? She comes from Samaria. She comes to the well, and he has this whole conversation with her and tells her that he is the living water. And then she goes back and she tells the people of the village that this man I met at the well, he knew all about me, and he told me all these great things. And from that, many people believed that Jesus stayed there for several days. That's in chapter 4, verses 1 through 42. So people are seeing him work miracles, and they are believing on him. And he's making a difference, and he's making his way. So he was down here in Jerusalem. He's coming down from Jerusalem. He's in Samaria. He's making his way to Galilee. And it says when he got to Galilee in chapter 4, verse 45, right before we're reading, it says, so when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also had gone to the feast. So, Passover, right? Everybody floods into Jerusalem that can get there. So all these people from Galilee that were believing Jews went to the Passover. Now they've returned from Jerusalem. They're back in the Galilean area. And you think about the talk that's going on in these small towns and villages. Everybody is talking about this man, Jesus of Nazareth. They're talking about, did you see this? Did you see what he did? Did you hear what he said? Were you there when he went in and turned the money carts upside down, all these signs? So there's lots of buzz, if you will, going around in the area around Galilee. And that's where we get to our story. So let's read, starting in verse 46. So Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. And when he heard that Jesus come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and implored him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. The nobleman said to him, Sir, come down before my child dies. And Jesus said to him, Go your way, your son lives. So the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him, and he went his way. And as he was now going down, his servant met him and told him, saying, Your son lives. Then he inquired of them the hour when he got better. And they said to him, Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. So the father knew that it was at the same time in which Jesus said to him, Your son lives. And he himself believed, and his whole household. This again is the second sign Jesus did when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. What a story. What a great healing by our Lord. So, a little bit about a nobleman. It says a certain nobleman. Now, you would think, when we think of nobleman, right, we think of someone that's maybe wealthy or someone who's born into a certain bloodline. That could be the case here. But a nobleman, if you look at the Greek word here, can mean really several things. It's a little more broader view. And I've got them up here. This is probably a Roman person, but it could be a Gentile, not necessarily a Roman. It could be a royal officer. It could be a servant, a steward, like it could handle civil matters. It could be somebody that's in the military. Now, what's interesting here, there's some possibilities that this could be a person that was in King Herod Antipas's house. And King Herod Antipas, he served in a place that was really close on the Sea of Galilee, close to Capernaum, close to where this man would have lived. So he could possibly been in the household of Herod Antipas. There's a couple of possibilities here. Look with me at Luke 8:3. Luke 8:3. I'm not saying that this is who this is, but it's a possibility. Luke 8:3. And Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna and many others who provided for him from their substance. So we have Chuza here as Herod's steward. Some think, well, could it possibly been Chuza here that he's talking about? We also have another in Acts. Look at Acts 13:1. Other possibility. Now in the church that was in Antioch, there were certain prophets and teachers, Barnabas, Simeon, who was called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. So we have two mentioned here that were associated with Herod. Maybe this is one of them. Who knows? We don't know that. It could be, it may not be. But Herod does have a place in Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. And an officer could have been part of that royal family, if you will. Therefore, he'd been called a nobleman. Even if he was a servant in Herod's house, he could have been called a nobleman because he could have had a level of stature, if you will, as a servant in a royal household. King Herod being a king. Now, the Romans, by now, do you think they're aware of what's going on with Jesus? If all these people have come back from Jerusalem seeing all these great things, what do you think the Romans are hearing? Think they're hearing the same thing? Right? They're hearing the same thing. So now, are the Romans, would they be pleased by something like that? To hear this man, this Jewish man from Nazareth is doing all these great things? Do you think they would, Nell said no, of course not. Do you think they would have been happy that he went and turned over the money changers from the Romans? We know the Jews were upset. The Jews that ran the temple, they were upset when Jesus went into the temple and overturned the money changers. How would the Romans feel about that, you think? Would they have thought, oh, good for those old Jews. This man's in here turning up there. Would they have been happy with that? Chuckling like, they couldn't even get along with themselves. Or would they have been more upset by that? What do you think?
Certainly didn't want them to disrupt in
So yeah, there probably was some smirking going on maybe with that. But certainly they would not want, though, any chaos arising, right? They would, anything that might be causing an uprising or anything like that, the Romans certainly would not want to see that whatsoever. And anybody seen as causing trouble would be naturally labeled as an enemy to King Herod. And this is King Herod's area, right, in Galilee. We're coming into Galilee. That's where Jesus does a lot of his ministry, and that's under King Herod's domain of his control there. It's interesting, 1 Corinthians 1:26. Someone read that passage for me. I'll let y'all turn there. Someone read 1 Corinthians 1:26. Read that. Anybody? 1:26. 1 Corinthians 1:26. Okay, not many noble. So it says here that not many of those kind of people were called by the God. What does it mean by that? What does Paul mean by that? That not many noble people will be called by the gospel. What does he mean by that? Ken, what does he mean by that?
Well, that's the way what we see today is that the rich and affluent looked at this as foolishness. And that's what they did in that day. Those of higher, they depend upon themselves.
Yeah, it's because of them they had what they had, right? They didn't need anything else. They didn't need a higher being or whatsoever. It's foolishness. And that's what he's saying here. So just keep that in mind. This is a nobleman, okay, that is coming to our Lord here, a nobleman. Larry?
You know, some people say that I'm doing this because this is my calling. And they, you know, maybe just didn't feel that attraction towards the gospel, that it wasn't their calling.
Okay. They, for whatever reason, didn't think, Larry said, that it was their calling. A lot of people have a calling, but maybe some people didn't connect with that or believe it was their calling. Is that what you're saying?
It's there, they just don't respond to it because they don't feel that that is.
Do they need a calling?
It's not attracting them. Calling is not calling them. It's not attracting them.
Okay. So, any significance to the word certain here? Look back up in verse 46. It says there was a certain nobleman. Any significance to the word certain here, you think? Do you recall the word certain being used before? Or is this something odd here? Here, I'll help you. Okay. Look, there's certain, look at all these places where Jesus, okay, is going to heal somebody or somebody's coming to him, and the word certain is put in front of the name. A certain ruler, a certain man, a certain woman, a certain centurion servant, multiple times there. Why do you think, is that just, Mark, why you bring attention to the word certain? Is there anything we need to draw from that?
Just as we said, in general, this is the rule, but there's always an exception. And we are called a peculiar people. He's calling out saying, hey, this is different.
Okay. And so Ken said, if you didn't hear him, he's saying these are specific people that are being called out. Not everybody falls into these generalities that maybe we've talked about, a nobleman. There are peculiar people. We are peculiar people. There is going to be a nobleman that will respond. There will be a rich person that will respond, right? There's going to be these things. And I think also, look at the question I have at the bottom. Do you think Jesus just walked around? Do you think when he walked around, and we know it says in many verses that many were healed. And then we have the specific healings. And we even know there were crowds all around him, and he had to break away from the crowd. But I don't have the answer here. But do you think Jesus was going around healing, that he was just indiscriminately just healing people left and right? Just zap, 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 heal, 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 heal. Do you think he was just healing people or do you think every time he healed someone, it was intentful and he knew that individual, and it was an intentful thing he was doing with that individual? Do you think it was just for example, Think about the lady with the issue of blood for 12 years. Remember her? And it says the crowds were all around him, and she pressed herself up into the crowds where she was able to touch the hem of his garment. And everybody's pressing on him and touching him. But what does it say about her? He felt the power go out of him, and he stopped and said, "Who touched me?" Right? Who touched me? And everybody's touching him. The disciples said, "Lord, everybody's touching you." He said, No, somebody touched me. I think this is my opinion here, but I think every time the Lord heals somebody, it was intentful, and it was a one-on-one experience. I'm not saying he wasn't healing a lot of people at one time. I'm not saying it was limiting him at all, but I just think every time he healed someone, I think everybody was certain. It was a specific person. Somebody's faith brought them to Jesus. It was some situation like that. Yes?
Do you think that Jesus used his divine power to know what the outcome of that person that he healed or did a miracle for would be? And that's why he chose certain people, because he knew how they would respond, and possibly chose not to? Or do you think it was just, do you think he used that divine knowledge?
I don't know. I think it had a lot.
Beforehand?
Yeah.
Or do you think he just waited to see, like you would wait to see how they respond?
Yeah, good question. I'm thinking, there's so many cases where someone's faith brought them, and he talks about their faith, So I'm thinking it's about the person and their heart, because I think about the crowd of people touching him, and I know we're getting off here, but touching him, and you think that when the lady with the issue of blood for 12 years touched him, were there other people touching him, you think, in that crowd that had an infirmary, that was sick? Yeah, she had faith, right? It was something about her, I don't know, but I got to believe that there were other people touching the Lord at that time too, who had an ailment or had a need or whatever. But it says this person was just touching him, and he felt that. So I think the point is, these are specific individuals. I think that's why the word certain is used here. Okay, that he is helping. Now, it says the nobleman had a son that was sick. If you look at the Greek word paidia, that means a little boy. So this is a child. He's got a sick child. Now, if he's a nobleman, and even if he's a servant working in the king's household, if he's wealthy, he has all the means in the world, right? He's connected. So the best doctors, he gets to go to UAB, he gets to go to Vanderbilt Hospital, right? He gets to go to Johns Hopkins, wherever, right? He's got the best of the best that's come. Do you think he's not pulled on those resources already? Of course he has. He's already brought those resources in, right, to heal his son, to make him well. And he can't make him well, right? Nothing's working here. Nothing's working, but yet he, being 20 miles away, that's how far Capernaum is to Cana, he's going to make this walk himself to find Jesus. Okay, to find Jesus. He's not going to send somebody. He probably had many resources. He could have sent someone else to go and meet the Lord, but he is going to go and he is going to beg Jesus to come forth and save him, So he had to come to Jesus, and like we have to come to Jesus today for salvation. People have to come to Jesus for salvation.
Do you think Jesus, he knew everything, and he knew people that's around him and lived there, and some of these, like these people come up on prayer, and for him to pray over them, Jesus kind of knew what kind of good it would do, I think. Because, it's just like anything else. People, they can ask you anything. And I don't know how to say it really, but like Jesus probably knew that he was sincere in his heart, and would try to do like he says do.
Yeah, and we're going to see that here in the story, right, that he does have some faith that he comes to him, right? So you're right. Jesus can see that this man has a level of faith because he's a nobleman and he's traveled 20 miles to come seek him out, right? Okay? So he sees some, Jesus certainly sees some good in him here. I kind of gave the answer here. Yes, yes. So the question I had here, which I've already kind of given the answer below it here, but, you know, what impresses you with the nobleman at this point? Right? Well, I mean, that he has courage, right? He's left his home, and he's gone seeking for someone that he's heard about that could possibly save his son. He's desperate. I mean, he really is. He's desperate. Now, I'm not saying you go to Jesus desperate. He doesn't know who the Lord is right now. He's heard about him, but he's desperate. And he's thinking, maybe this will work. Yes, sir.
Well, we must not forget the overall purpose of these things was to confirm the word, to make people believe before we had the written word.
That's correct. That's right, Brother Ken. So it is to make sure these signs are to show and confirm that he is God, right? That he is of God, and that what he is saying is confirmed through those signs. You're absolutely right. And that's exactly why he gives the apostles these abilities, right? Day of Pentecost, these abilities, that flaming tongues come down. They've been given these abilities so they can, as they go out and preach in Acts, that they're confirmed that they are speakers of God and what they're saying is true. But his faith, you know, he has faith, right? I mean, he has faith that's motivated him to come, possibly maybe even risking himself because he's a nobleman and his standing. And if he was in King Herod's household, maybe that wouldn't be a good thing, that King Herod would want to have one of his own running after this carpenter from Nazareth, possibly. But he does think that the Lord can save him here. I do appreciate the fact that he has faith. And then the Lord, verse 48, it seems kind of harsh here, does it not? He says in verse 47, my son's at the point of death. Please heal my son. Verse 48, and Jesus said to him, okay, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. Now, he says you people, all right, so it must be other people obviously around, you know. So Jesus is here in Cana, other people around him. Here comes the nobleman. He's traveled 20 miles. Let's say he's traveled all day. 20 miles is a long day's journey, right? Maybe he's come by foot. Maybe he had an animal he rode on. I don't know, but he's come 20 miles. And then Jesus' response is going to be, all y'all are about, you people, is about a sign. You want me to do some sign, right? Now, is he rebuking right here? Is he rebuking the nobleman, you think? What do you think? Is this directed at the nobleman? Is that what the nobleman wants? Is that what the nobleman's come? That he's come 20 miles to see the Lord, and he says, the nobleman's come thinking, if it was giving you some great sign, I just want to see some great sign. Is that what the nobleman's looking for? Who said no? Okay. Doesn't look like he's looking for that. He's looking for healing of his son, right? Healing of his son. It looks like to me the Lord here has used an opportunity for all those around him, because are there people that are curious and all they're doing is following after Jesus and want him to do some magic show? You know? Yeah, there are some, right? And we know there are Pharisees in the midst that have been following him around, right? They're trying to look to see what is this man? They're confused. They're trying to see what's going on, that are wanting some signs. But here's a reminder about, it's not about Jesus just doing signs. There's a purpose and there's a reason behind what he is doing. And then I love the fact of the nobleman here, that he doesn't take this rebuke. It doesn't just make him cower. It doesn't make him shrink away. It doesn't make him give up, right? It doesn't at all. I mean, matter of fact, it just kind of reaffirms his faith. So then in verse 49, the nobleman said to him, Sir, come down before my child dies. Well, did he not just hear the Lord? Did he not hear the Lord say about, why are y'all asking me to do all these signs and stuff? What are your thoughts there, that exchange? What do you think Jesus was intending his audience to hear? And what do you think the nobleman was hearing? What are your thoughts?
says it, sir, come down. He's not asking, he's
Yeah.
telling him.
He's telling him, yes. Good point, Jake. Yeah. There was no, would you please consider coming down and helping me? He says,
King Herod's nobleman.
yes.
He has servants.
Okay.
And he is used to telling them what to do. And so when Jesus insinuates that he is not doing it, that way, he commands him to do it. Come down.
Okay. All right.
And down means Cana's up here and Capernaum's down there.
Yeah, Capernaum's is on the sea, so it's down by the sea. Okay. What else? What do you think? How do you think the man, the nobleman's taking this from the Lord?
Well, put yourself in his position. He's not there for the same reason. And you've already talked about that. He's hearing, Charlie Brown teacher noise in the background with all the things that they're wanting.
Mm-hmm.
He's got one thing on his mind, his son. And he's waiting for that moment to get Jesus' attention, to get him to do what he wants him to do.
So you're saying he's in there, womp, 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 womp. Is that what you're saying, Charlie Brown?
All that other stuff is just background noise
Yeah.
to him.
Sure.
The Pharisees, the other Jews, all the ones that have been harping on Jesus for, a long time, not just here. Show us a sign. Show us a sign. You got to remember, too, they had sorcerers that could do some miraculous
Sure.
things that were, just man-made, but to the normal person, they were like off the chart. And so they were just wanting him to show signs greater than to prove something, or to disprove, really. In their heart, they wanted him to be disproved. But this man was only focused on, he believed, and it's obvious he believed, because it says, when Jesus told him, your son lives, it says, he believed.
Yeah.
So he knew he wasn't there to give a show. He was there to get his son.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never actually got a sign.
He didn't.
It was,
He got a word.
can you imagine, you would think, everything we think is physical, it's touch, it's whatever. You would think, okay, well, he's going to come, he's going to come back with me and, do whatever, lay his hands on me, whatever. But Jesus says, go, your son will live. And the fact, right there, that defining point right there, it says the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. He didn't need a sign.
Yeah.
He's 20 miles away. He doesn't know if his son's getting better or not.
Yes. So he's got a level of faith, does he not? He has a level of faith. It's not going to be, we're going to find here in a few verses, his faith could be it's going to grow even more. But he has faith, right? And you mentioned that he wasn't asked to do anything great. Right? It wasn't like Jesus said, okay, I'm going to pray to God right now and that God will do this for us. Or he didn't say, I need you to go do this act, or I need you to go whatever. And I was thinking about this guy Naaman in 2 Kings. Do y'all remember that situation where he had leprosy? Remember, he was wanting to come to the king of Israel or to the prophet Elisha to do some great thing to heal him. Remember, prophet Elisha just sent a messenger to him and said, here's what you need to do if you want to be healed. Just go over here and dip 7 times in the Jordan River and you'll be healed. And remember, Naaman was like, the rivers back in Damascus are better, are they not, than this river? I could go do that anytime. Give me something grandiose, right? He was, remember his people that were supporting him, Naaman had to convince him, look, just go do this. And he did, and he was washed, and he was healed.
Mark, I kind of look at it from just a realistic view, is that Christ is just teaching. There was signs and wonders because God said there's going to be signs and wonders. So it's not a negative.
Right.
Some people believe anything quickly. Some people you have to be convinced. And that's why God sent signs and wonders so people would be convinced. It's not a negative.
Sure.
If they show them a sign or a wonder. God's the one that had the plan that says, I'm going to show you signs and wonders.
And that's where it had to start in the very beginning.
Yes.
He had to do that first to get so they would know something special about it.
So I think Christ is just teaching.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, here's signs and wonders. Pay attention. Everybody, here's the sign. Pay attention to this guy. Now, he had the faith where he already had it, but the people around that didn't, that would know him, say, hey, we're going to go see. Let's go see. They're kind of like Thomas.
Yeah, he wants them to, through the signs, to hear him, right? They want him to hear him and what he's doing and know what he's about, how the good he's doing. That's what he wants.
Wonder how come Jesus, he did everything in numbers. I mean, a lot of stuff in numbers. You do this so many times, 7 times. Walk around the gates so many times. And they would fall. Wonder why he was.
Well, I think God, in a lot of the Old Testament, and Jesus was specific about some things too, about, putting mud on your eyes to have you healed. Sometimes I think it's just showing, will you do what I ask you to do? Just showing, looking for your faith and obedience that you will do what he says to do. And I like it. I like the fact that the recordings of his miracles are so varied in how he did them and where he was and what he said or what physically took place or what didn't physically take place. I love it that we have all these different variations there, because it's about trusting in God and doing what he says. And I appreciate the fact that there's like every time he healed him, there was, step 1, step 2, step 3, and that we got to go do this. We're going to first do this, and then I'm going to have to, hit you on your head, and then, you're going to stand up and stand on your head, and then, it wasn't nothing like that, right? It wasn't anything like that at all. Good comments, good questions. All right. Yeah, good question. We know down in verse 53, it says, he himself believed and his whole household believed. But now, Tim, good point. If he's in Cana, when this conversation takes place with the Lord, you got to believe that there were some curious people there, right? That followed him back, had heard this and maybe followed him back to Capernaum. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I also wonder, why did they specifically mention the water and wine in verse 46? You think that's the only thing that this man had heard of that Christ had done?
Yeah, I don't know. Or if it's just reminding us in Cana that we're back in that same place where he did that before. I don't know. John's recording. And John's the only one who records this miracle too, by the way. They're not in the other Gospels. It's just in John who records this. Well, the water of wine, we believe, was the first miracle, but this is not necessarily the second miracle. He's already done several signs and other things in Jerusalem.
Verse 54, this is the second sign.
The second sign Jesus did when he came out of Judea into Galilee. That's how.
So it's the second sign in this area.
In this area, right. In this area. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so it's interesting here that I've got a lot more here. It is interesting, the faith of this man, though, because when it looks like he traveled 20 miles to see Jesus, okay, and then he must have spent the night because he didn't have enough time to get home. Because it's the next day that when his servants come to him and say, hey, your son lives. And he says, what hour did he get better? And I think when I see this here, it says what hour gets better. I don't know if he really believes that he's completely 100% healed. I think the father's just thinking, okay, he's better. He's better. When did he get better? And they told him it was the 7th hour yesterday. And he remembered. He knew exactly what time it was he met Jesus. And he knows at that point in time that he was healed. And the people and his servants say his fever left him, as if he's completely well. He's completely whole. And again, from that, his faith grows so much that he says he himself believed. Well, what did he believe here? Did he not believe in Jesus up here in verse 50 when he went to him and traveled 20 miles? Did he believe that Jesus could do something for him? Well, he believed then, but what's the difference here in the belief here? What does it mean when he says he himself believed in his whole household? What did they believe?
I think that he had heard things, and he believed that Jesus had done things. But I think at the end, where it says he and his household believed, they believed that he was the Son of God, that he was the Messiah.
He was the Messiah. Yeah, I believe you're right, Larry. I think he's seen this firsthand, and who knows what else the Lord has said to him, as well when he's coming back. And, when he's coming back, I mean, did he have other conversations with the Lord before he left, or was it just this conversation only and he left? But surely he's heard other information from people, stories about him claiming to be the Messiah. But here, he believes in his whole household. Just a good reminder to us that through our suffering and through our pain and through our hard times in life, many times, and you've seen it and I've seen it, that is when people come to the Lord, right? Through those opportunities that people come to the Lord. And you've seen it. We've had maybe children or people in our lives that have fallen away. They don't, they're just not faithful. And all of a sudden something bad happens in their life, and all of a sudden their mind and attention is longing for and directed back to the Lord. That's the situation here. It's also a good reminder, I think, for me and us fathers that we can change our whole household. Our belief and our leadership can affect and cause our whole household to come to the Lord. I mean, the Lord saves, but through our influence. This man, because of his belief and his faith, it says his whole household, he was able to convince them as well, and they all believed. Any other comments for the second bell rings? Anything else?
Just that your belief grows, as you go, and it continues. Hopefully, it's stronger.
Yes.
It can go both ways. Hopefully, it grows stronger.
Yeah. Grow stronger. Hey, one other thing I meant to mention here, I realized over here, Gideon. Remember Gideon? Remember when the Lord was telling him, I'm going to help you, I'm going to slay the Midianites, and he had to have proof, right? This man didn't ask for proof from God, from Jesus. He said, you said it, I'll go back home. My son, I'll believe you. But Gideon said, no, I'll tell you what, if I put my fleece out here and you let dew be on the fleece and no dew on the ground, then I'll believe you, Lord. And then he did that. Then Gideon says, well, one more test, Lord, right? I'm going to put the fleece back out there and don't let dew be on it, but let dew be on the, What if this man had said, well, wait a second, Lord, before I go all the way back home without you, I need some assurance. I need some assurance before I do this, that you're really who you are. You're really going to do something. He didn't. He believed. He had great faith. Thank you for your comments.